Welcome to my second video about changing the CG125 alternator setup to charge the battery so that you can use DC lights rather than AC lighting. As I said at the end of the last video, I would do another video showing the type of rectifier regulator used and the wiring modifications to make. Well, I've done 3 of these CG125 modifications, changing the alternator driven lighting to run off the battery, and the 3 times I've used this rectifier regulator, which is a Lucas branded one, more than ample for the CG125. Single phase regulator, or rectifier regulator. I've seen it cheaper than that. I'm nothing to do with this Bikes outfit, it was just the first place I found. I've definitely seen it cheaper than that. I've got another one here. This is obviously America or Australia or Canada or something. What you might see on eBay is ones that look like that at like $5.99 or $10 or something like that. They might look like that, but they're not going to be the same inside. Just look up on YouTube, for example, fake rectifier regulator, and you'll see the mess of some of these. The casing, the aluminium heatsink, might be made in the same factory in China, but what's inside is totally different. So if you're going to do this, buy a branded make like Lucas, which are maybe not the best in the world. I used to say it was Joseph Lucas was the Prince of Darkness, but buy a branded make from a reputable supplier. Now, I've done 3 CG125s. One of them was about 7 or 8 years ago. It's still running, no problem. Lights running on the battery. I also mentioned that I would show the wiring modifications that need done. This wiring diagram has been partly coloured. In fact, I know why it's been partly coloured. This is the AC system on the CG125 that uses this type of setup. There's the alternator, unmodified. Still got its centre tap, it's still earthed. The white comes up straight into the rectifier regulator. The yellow comes up into the rectifier regulator, but it also, along this yellow one, goes to the light switch. This is the original AC setup. In the lighting circuit on the AC system there is also, if you follow this pink wire, a resistor. Now that resistor is in place when the lights are off or when they're on the pilot light and tail light. Now the reason for that is if that wasn't there and you switched on your pilot light and your tail light, there'd be too much voltage, it would just blow the bulbs. So when you put on the headlight, the switch takes that resistor out, so it's full power going to the headlight system. Anyway, what you need to do if you're changing to the DC setup, you do the modification that I showed in the last video to the alternator, and then you have to remove the lighting feed from this yellow, so that what you're left with is just the white and the yellow feeding into the rectifier regulator. You change that rectifier regulator to the full wave one, the Lucas one that I showed you, or something similar. Full wave, single phase. This wire you then need to connect to a switched 12 volt positive. Now this is ignition switch. Red is the battery feed. On this example, the newer ones, older ones might be different, I don't know, other bikes might be different colour systems. Tend to be fairly similar, right enough. Power to feed everything comes out on the black, the switch supply, which is slightly unusual, I think, to have a black for that. And what has happened here is that yellow has been connected to the black. So the lights are now fed from a switched DC supply from the battery. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, can I suggest again that you don't bother doing this modification, because some people are into bikes seem to have a desperate time with electrics. Some people are just not designed to, the brains just don't work this way at all. So I'll say again, if you're struggling to follow what I'm talking about here, then I would suggest, it's only a suggestion, that you don't bother with this. Take it to somebody who really knows what they're doing. I've started dismantling the sides of my Honda CG125 here to get into the alternator. I've taken the side cover off and the gear lever, but I thought it'd be worth showing this. To undo the centre nut, I use a piece of angle metal with a bolt on it. What I do is I stick that in there, and you can put your socket on it, and it goes against that, and it lets you undo the nut, like that. There's no banging or impact wrenches or anything like that. Now, you can get a puller on these in behind, a 3-prong puller, but it can do a little bit of damage. So it's worth getting one of these. I think that's 1mm thread by, I think it's 27 diameter, slightly weird size, and it's a left hand thread. I'm not sure if the older CG125s or newer ones are the same. There we go. Ah, that's why it's not going in. That's needing unwound. That's better. And usefully, that is the same size as the nut that was in there. Just stick a shifter on there. There we go. Easy as that. Right, that's me attached the newly modified alternator stator windings to my Honda CG125. I'm going to test it before I give it back to the guy. I've also removed the two output wires from the alternator, from the connectors to the bike, so it won't be charging into the system. What I've got down here is a halogen headlamp bulb, 12 volt, but I've got the two filaments connected in series, so it should be able to take at least 24 volts. And down here I've got one meter that's going to measure current and the other one's going to measure voltage, just to get an idea what kind of output we're getting from this windings. I won't be able to rev the bike up to full RPM without any engine load, because I don't want to damage it, but it'll give us an idea anyway. Right, to sum up, I'll just go through everything, all the modifications that need to be done if you're wanting to change your lights to run on the battery on the DC system rather than directly from the alternator on the AC system. The first thing you need to do is modify the alternator windings as I showed in the previous video. I suggest buying a cheap replacement set of windings to modify so you can keep your original Honda ones. If you ever want to put it back to standard, then you can easily do that. Second thing you need to do is change the rectifier regulator to full wave type and do away with the little Honda one. Third thing, take the lighting feed from the AC system and connect it to the switched side of the ignition switch on the DC supply. If you're concerned about the loading on it, then you could put in a little relay, but that makes it more complicated, and as I say, I've done 3 of these previously and there's never been any problems with the load on the switch. Fourth thing, remove the lighting resistor, disconnect it and just make the wire safe so it doesn't short out onto anything. You can leave the resistor in place, just disconnect it, or you can move it completely. And the other thing I would suggest doing is doing away with the filament headlamp bulb, which I think is a 36 watt, so that's like 3 amps on its own, and fit like an 18 watt LED. It'll be brighter anyway, and there's less loading on the system. Anyway, please don't go destroying your little CG125. Make sure you figured out all the things you need to do beforehand. Don't start doing one thing and then realise you can't find where something else is or something. Very easy to get carried away. Thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video.